and welcome back to the Relative Roads podcast. It's me, Mike, and I haven't spoken to you in quite some time. I have been very busy and trying to keep a healthy balance in my life, and sometimes the podcasts fall short, and I know, it seems negligent, but those personal relationships they sure are great. So anyways, I don't know, I've kind of been around doing a lot of different things. I went to Portland shortly after Thanksgiving, like the next day, and filmed a movie up there. Well, parts of a trailer we had filmed up there. I got to do some acting, kind of sparked that juice a little bit in me, and now I'm like eager to do more. Just love it, man. It's true. Once you get bit by that bug, you're like, I gotta have more. And that's kind of what's going on. Otherwise, work's cool. Went to a Christmas party, stayed the night in Monterey, California, in a luxury 17-star hotel. And we had a bed that converted into a hot tub, that converted into a balcony, that converted into like a fire pit with seating around it. But otherwise, it was like a California. No, I think it was like a Mississippi king size, Missouri king size, Delta. It might have been. I don't know. It was pretty big, and that was a blast. I had met a lot of people that I had not met previously that work at the same company, and this beautiful Spanish restaurant in Monterey. We got to enjoy some 23-star meals. It was a little cold when I got to the table, but hey, it's okay. It's all right. I got through it. It was fine. I really did have a wonderful time. And next year, I think we'll go and I'll get a limo. Yeah. Or like an RV or something. Park it out front. Just sleep there all day until the party. And yeah, that'll work. Let's see, what else have I been up to? A lot of driving around. Just enjoying the weather. Enjoying the spirit of the season. Maybe I just can't help but talk like an optimist. I just can't help it. But let me continue. I like the holiday season, man. I like the attitudes. I feel thankful, grateful, and yeah, I'm just a big, fat, happy son of a bitch right now. No way around that. Shout out to my mother. She just recently flew out to San Antonio. It was interesting. The last few months have been very interesting in my family dynamics. My mother has come to stay I think she was here for a little over 2 months. She spent some time at my sister's house, some time with me, and we had our fun, and c'est la vie. She's at her friend of 30 years. She's in San Antonio with her and starting over. God bless her. That woman is amazing. That woman is nothing less than amazing. You know, she came a long way from the Philippines, man. And now she's in San Antonio. So shout out to Mom. Sorry about the sharp little mouth noises. What else? Anything I've watched recently? Yeah, the documentary series Broken is pretty cool. It's on Netflix. It's about I don't know, stuff that's controversial as far as like vape pens and the vaping industry, the makeup industry, how they like have knockoffs and how those are made with like dangerous chemicals, and like I'm more educated now because of this show. So take a look at that. we watched something today, The Gringo. It was with Charlize Theron. I really am not going to remember that other guy's name. Yeah. It was all right. It was fun, I guess. It's about drugs and ransoms and rich people and shady people and all that good stuff. So check that out. This interview, sorry to yell, sorry about that. This interview is with my new friend, Marcus Graziano. I met Marcus at my day job, and we talk quite a bit and, try to cram as much into a short conversation as possible because, I'm just there to deliver them out. And we have all these really quick and, deep conversations that we never really had the chance to dive into. And then I asked him if he would do a podcast episode with me, and he was down. And this is a busy man. He's involved in a lot of different things, and for him to set aside some time for me, I'm so grateful. But Marcus grew up in the wine business, literally in vineyards, working as a young child. His family was from Italy, and it's been the business since he's been alive. And he also worked with some of the lobbyists at the state capitol, and he kind of got to know the political crowd in Sacramento, and has been doing business since 1985, and really positive go-getter kind of guy. And I think that's what sort of attracted me to him is he's got a wealth of information just by having a good attitude. Just being around the guy, I learn more that way as much as I do through conversation. But yeah, man, I'm just going to keep on talking to folks and trying to learn new things and then spread the love, because that's what we do around here on these roads that are relative to one another. All right, then. Well, without further ado, I'd like to bring you to the stage of your mind in this podcast, my good friend, Marcus Graziano.
I'm just a wandering nomad out on the interstate. Eventually all these roads just end up looking the same. And now it's time for another episode of Relative Road.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Marcus.
Thank you, Mike. This is just it's a real joy.
Yeah.
Real privilege.
Yeah, likewise, man. I've been excited about this and nervous too, mind you. I've been nervous. The goal and the intention early on was to get to know people I don't know at all. And I've been experimenting with people I've known for years, which is its own thing.
Exactly.
But you and I, we've had brief exchanges in other parts of life, and so here we are to kind of dive in a little bit.
Exactly, and I've really got to enjoy getting to know you because we've had a little time to talk as you come in, and that's part of, I think, the joy of my job is getting to know people like yourself, and because I learned a little bit about myself by talking with other people.
Yeah, and I read your bio, and you studied international
relations and economics.
Yeah. So does that kind of play a part in how you're able to relate to people?
I think it does in a way. I think it's, when you're studying kind of world economics, it's always having to look from other people's perspective.
Is that, how does studying that process look? What kind of experiences in the education did you kind of have to force yourself to open up?
It's really interesting because when I was going to school at UC Davis, I was got involved in the internship program. And as I was getting involved in going around and helping other UCs start their internship program, we had a really great one at Davis. I realized that there was a lot of things that were almost in conflict of academics and reality. because as I was going to my professors trying to get some information from them as to where I could go and where I could talk to develop internships, they were very opposed to it, in a way. They weren't helpful, and I was trying to figure out why. And then I realized that, I don't think they wanted a student in their class who was having some reality, experiences and challenging them, in their classroom going, Professor, I don't think that's the way it actually is. So, and it was interesting for me because I really wanted to go to school to get a better job. I mean, that was the whole point, right?
Right.
And I realized that academics was sometimes in conflict. To that.
How old were you when you were in college?
So I was 17.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You went right in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Went right in.
All right.
And then worked in the city, and then came back a couple years later to start. I realized I didn't want to work for anybody. So I was going to go get my MBA and then work for, I love traveling, so work for a multinational corporation and do that whole thing. But after working for a corporation, I said, maybe I'd really like to work for myself.
Yeah, so you learned that quite early.
I did.
Yeah, and I can attest to not having learned that early, and now at 39, being at that very position in my mind, you know what? I think the ultimate freedom is to not work for anybody else.
Right.
What made you realize that really early on? Was it just the discomfort of being told what to do, or?
No, I think that there were some experiences I had working in the corporate field because I wanted to promote some people that were staff people that weren't executives. And I was told that's not the way it works. And that's not the way I was raised. I was raised by parents who treat, everybody equally. And when I saw that these people, my staff that were so great and they were intelligent and they were great work ethic, thought that they really should be promoted into the executive program. And I was told that that's not the way it works.
Yeah, we don't focus on the little people.
Right. And that's when I kind of realized, well, maybe this is not for me at that point.
Yeah. So your parents kind of raised you to be that way. And from what I read, you're originally from Italy, or your parents were?
My father.
Okay.
My father came over from Italy, and or his parents came over from Italy, and then he was born was very young here. I think they were just here for a couple years, and then they grew up in the very strong. They were Northern Italian, Swiss Italians.
And where was this at?
Up in Mendocino County. In an
okay.
area outside of Ukiah called Redwood Valley.
Yeah, beautiful up there.
Yeah, and it was great growing up in a vineyard because my parents taught me the work ethic, which is the other point about going in business for yourself, because that's the one key factor you really need to have.
Yeah. What does that look like early on? I mean, when you first started, you opened your first business in 1985?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And when you were starting that process, how nervous were you? I mean, were you?
It's a great question because, funny you should say, because I remember seeing this commercial on television. It was these people doing these crazy things, jumping off cliffs, jumping out of airplanes and everything. They said, well, you think that takes guts, start your own business. And I think that it is, you wonder, how am I going to support myself and going out to do this? But I think, I never really doubted it. I think because I had the passion to do what I really loved doing, and that was being in the wine business since I grew up in it. And I found a niche to sell it and to be in more of a personalized kind of industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, knowing a lot about wine is, it takes years, I think, to gain that knowledge. And if you grew up around it, you sort of naturally have it. What do you love about it? What is it that is the same back then and is now?
It's such a personal thing, first of all. And I think when you look at individuals, you realize that you're just trying to connect them with something that they like. Yeah. And maybe my role was helping people learn about what they like, not to tell them what to like and what not to like. And I think in the industry, it's so personal. And it was really seemed to connect people with a quality of life. People were sharing something. They saw a lot of health benefits for moderate drinking of wine.
Interesting.
They saw just the socialization, for people just bringing them together and enjoying life.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be that little nucleus about wine.
Yeah.
And people worked really hard. They worked hard in the vineyards. They worked hard in the winery. I mean, all this effort to make this one product, that other people could really enjoy. So for me, I realized there was, starting in that long ago, there was some absence of being an ambassador for the industry and connecting those stories of that wine to the customer.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's where I really started, building my business, was just to do that.
It's funny because I wrote down a question relative to that is, what do you think are some of the most important things to know about wine? And it sounds like the production and the story behind the production company with the bottled wine that you're...
Right. There's so much that goes into it, and people are so passionate about it. When you really walk the vineyards with the growers, and you walk through the winery with the winemakers, and you also see there's a cross relationship, because now more winemakers are spending time in the vineyards than they ever have. I mean, most winemakers now are also viticulturalists, because I think they realize that, they're minimalists in one regard. If they can have those grapes come in perfect, then they could just do their own thing, and they could just stand back and watch that happen and not manipulate it. And I think that's really where winemakers found their really calling, is to get into the viticultural part of it, because you cannot make a great wine without great grapes.
Right.
That's one thing that's undisputable.
So when you go about, well, let's say this, if you were going to start growing a vineyard, how would you go about getting the vines to do so? Is it all old vines that you get, or can you start from seeds? I mean...
Yeah, no, you would buy the rootstock. So basically it starts with the rootstock, and if it's a wild rootstock, then you can plant that. And you have to look at your soils and your area and what's going to be best for that particular area. And then you can graft either that variety on it, or you can buy that particular rootstock already with, like, Cabernet.
So when you graft, what does that mean?
You graft the bud, like you can have a wild rootstock growing a vine, and that really doesn't have any particular varietal, and then you get a bud from, like, a Cabernet vine, and you make a little slice and you put that bud into that area, and then that also grows, now Cabernet. Now, then a lot of people realize, well, what if I want to change it? Well, now they developed other techniques that they can just, like, when it's tea budding, you just hack off the thing and slice that stalk, that trunk, and then put that bud in there, and you could change that whole variety.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to see all the technology that went into it. Now, with a lot of things like phylloxera, which is a root louse that kind of eats away and it can destroy the vine over years, they're finding a lot of areas that the rootstock weren't resistant, weren't resistant to this phylloxera. So they had to make sure to develop, those rootstocks that were resistant, so they didn't have that problem. So there's just a lot of science. There's a lot of science from UC Davis, obviously, is one of the best in the world. There's Cal Poly. There's areas now all over that are really in the study of what's called viticulture, with the grape growing, and then enology of winemaking.
Yeah. How much of your general knowledge from your youth helped you when you got into college to study this a little bit further and dive a little deeper?
Not maybe as much as you might think. I just, I worked in the vineyards at a very, very young age, and, went through the whole process. And my parents didn't make wine. They were growers.
Yeah.
So then they brought their grapes to wineries that made wine. So I really wasn't as connected to winemaking as I was just
the culture
of that, and the families and the people, and, producing.
Yeah.
The end result being wine.
Right.
My brother's a winemaker.
Oh, okay.
He has a winery up in Mendocino County.
Oh, wow.
And he specializes in Italian varietals up there, and he's phenomenal. I mean, the wines that he's making.
Do you think that wine directly from Italy is any better or any worse or any different from Italian wine that's produced in California?
Well, it's really interesting, because people always say, well, when I've been there, traveling in Italy, and I would drink wine, I wouldn't get a headache, but I'd be over here, and we try to make them realize that a lot of it's just the environment and the food that they're eating. Because I think the food is so pure over there for the most part, and they may have been associating it with the wine, but pretty much wine is made the same way. Fermentation is pretty much exact science.
Yeah.
And things happen the same way anywhere else. A lot of it now is just with growing grapes organically or biodynamically. And those things are, which most all the wines that I carry, all these growers are growing organically.
Organically. Is that an advantage?
Well, I think for them environmentally it is, because they are stewards of the land.
Sure.
And it's really important. Their children are there, their grandchildren, and they've always been very conscious of that, and aware of environments and not to use pesticides, and to find all kinds of ways to go more naturally for all that.
Do you find that your clients go more so for organically grown, or does it matter much?
I think it matters to my customers, but I think they know that the wines that I carry are pretty much that way. I mean, they are grown. The grapes are grown organically, and
part of your personality as
exactly
a dealer.
Yes, because again, especially when you're making them in such small quantities, the wines that I represent, they can be as small as 48 cases.
Oh, wow.
I have one wine that he only made 2 barrels of, to maybe 300 or 400 cases, which is still extremely small production.
Yeah.
So I think that they're very conscious about that, and they can do it economically. They can be very organic, and they can grow, be conscious to the environment.
Yeah. Do you find those wines to be of higher quality than, say, the mass produced?
Well, I think that when you start making wines in larger productions, yes, because the grapes, you have to go back to what I'm saying is you can't make a great wine from great grapes. Even in a small block, those grapes can vary in quality so dramatically from one end of that block to the other end. Yeah. And this is just a small, maybe 24 rows by 24. Yeah. And they're getting into actually weaving in and out, because they realize the soils, the drainage, everything's a little different in that block, and finding the right quality, the highest quality of those grapes in that block. So some of them get really crazy, about making sure. So, but when you start mass producing it, you're buying vineyards from other areas. Like for example, I know one winery that they started out and they were very small and making great wines, and then they grew and grew, and they still maintained good quality, but then they sold. And they sold for about well over $100 million. Well, the only way those investors are going to make their money back is they got to increase their production, right? Yeah. Well, that's when the quality started going down, because they started outsourcing to other vineyards. They were looking more for the quantity, realizing they had to sacrifice quality for that. But they were going out in markets that never had that wine before, so they didn't have anything to compare with. Yeah. And it became economics to them. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are still passionate who worked in that winery, but we all see it in our industry that when a winery gets sold for a lot of money, there goes the quality. Yeah,
and I think in terms of ownership, when you have to walk around with that reputation, it's a little tough.
It is. I can't blame people for, making money and selling their product. That's I understand that. I mean, that's what they worked really hard for all those years. Yeah. Some people just, it doesn't mean anything to them, or they made their money somewhere else, and this becomes more of a passion to them.
Sure.
They always say, how you make a small fortune in the wine business? You invest a large one.
Well, I guess that makes sense after that story.
Yeah.
So I asked these questions because, in my side of things with the wine business, I only notice the distribution portion of it. And when I see things mass produced and shoveled out the back of the truck, it makes me think, how high quality is this? And I know that after a while, people are just paying for a name.
Yes.
Yeah. And just as a part of commerce, I don't know, there's something about that doesn't sit well, but I think that's also a free world problem. Yeah,
everybody has their own level of passion in anything. And for wine, I have a lot of customers who enjoy it, who maybe aren't not so, they know the quality that I sell is really good. But a lot of times we can find great wines that are, not as expensive, maybe in the $20 price range. Yeah. And if we can find some really good quality wines in that price range, then they're just really good with it. I have other customers who really get into it big time, and they realize that in order for them to achieve a certain quality, they know that the money that's invested in that particular wine is going to cost them, a lot of money. Yeah. but they've developed their palate and their passion for it.
Right.
You
They earned that
Yeah.
perspective.
And wine really, I talked to a lot of customers about this. Wine is emotional.
Yeah.
It's very emotional to people, and how I really saw that is a lot of people would say, "Hey, I had this wine, and then my wife and I had it maybe a couple of years later. It was awful." And I'd ask them, "Well, what was going on when you had it the first time?"
Yeah.
"Well, we were on our honeymoon," and I'm going, "Well, okay." I think anything would have tasted pretty good. You were, in the moment at that point.
Yeah.
But still, people, when they hear the stories, when I talk about those stories, when I talk about things that are going on in the industry, maybe of that particular wine, you could see that it's going to mean something even more to them.
Yeah.
And because they really connect with that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's natural for them to be even more excited about something and tasting something, and they could maybe sense something
Invest
more.
themselves emotionally.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think the same thing happens with movies. When I think when you first watch a movie that's recommended by somebody, if you don't know the background, you have a very surface level experience. But then sometimes if you venture into the make of the movie, when you get into the extra features and you watch the making of, you see how difficult certain things are, and you learn a lot about how that story came to be. It gives you a completely different experience, and you're submersed a little bit more into the artistic process, which I think relates in the same way to wine, the production of it.
Yeah, it really does. And I had a little experience with that, doing a lot of work with Motion Pictures Association, and one of my friends, who's a lobbyist here, is also an actor, and Jerry Haleva, and Jerry played Saddam Hussein in the movies.
Oh, wow.
So he was in Hot Shots Part 2, The Big Lebowski. He's a lobbyist here, and he's just the most funniest man you'd ever meet. Just a great person. Well, he got asked to do a thing called Live from Baghdad down in L.A. with Michael Keaton, and Jerry called me and said, "Hey, will you want to come down and just watch this small part that he was being filmed in?" Wow, that 30-second part took hours and hours. And it was, that's how I really learned about, this is amazing.
Yeah, no
the
kidding.
complexity of film and acting, and it really blew me away.
And you said you worked with some of the production companies. I saw that you worked with DreamWorks and a few others.
Yeah, for special events that they had.
Oh, okay.
And because of my connection through a lot of the corporate work that I was doing, or through the U.S. Senate back in D.C., then, got connected with them, and they said, "Hey, we need some wine for a special event." And a lot of times I was able to attend that event, just to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So that was the fun, finding something that was special to go, that they
Sure.
needed. It was really, really incredible.
Yeah. I did see that you've worked alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger or had some affiliation with him.
Yeah, when he was governor, and then we provided some, wines for some of his events as well. And that was really good because they did a lot of fundraising and a lot of other events. So, yes.
Did you interact with him much?
Yeah, I mean, I met him. He actually came to my store. He did over in West Roseville, and did an event. He was really very nice and very approachable, and actually pretty funny guy too.
Yeah. He seems that way.
Yeah, very much so. He wasn't. It's really interesting because when you see somebody, a live person, you think that they're so tall,
Right.
and then you realize, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's not that tall at all.
Yeah, they seem larger than life on the screen.
Exactly.
Then they're just a normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Or usually a lot smaller.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I've
I've
heard that.
Exactly. That was always interesting.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I have some specific questions to ask you.
Sure.
Because I think they're interesting, and turns out somebody else thinks they're interesting.
Okay.
So we'll try that. You grew up here in California your whole life.
Yes.
I know you did some traveling. You've never lived anywhere else in terms of long.
No. Yeah. No. I mean, when I was going to school, obviously came here, lived in Davis, and then in Sacramento, and then when I worked in San Francisco, I lived in Sausalito.
Okay.
For a couple of years.
So Northern California is
Northern California's been it
territory.
exactly.
Yeah, love it. What would be your best childhood memory?
Oh, that's a great question. The best childhood memories always was, I think, working the harvest. I just remember just with the family together and all this work all through the year, and then it comes down to a couple of weeks of harvest and being involved with that.
Yeah.
And being able to operate the machinery and stuff like that, especially when I was very young
Yeah, I
and could
bet.
drive all the the cars and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was like maybe
Yeah,
10
yeah.
years old, and I
Yeah.
could drive all this, the tractors and
Right.
everything like that.
Every kid's dream.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we had, about 40, 50 acres to run around. We had a little small lake on our property. And so we got to, my parents stocked it with fish. So we'd go down there and,
Yeah.
fish and just really enjoy nature from that.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was probably, I think when I go back and just how memorable that was.
Yeah.
Because we just always were together. And that was just the whole culmination of all this hard work would come down to that
Right.
couple weeks with harvest.
Was there, as far as people who were in that business, was there a lot of Hispanics? Was there a lot of immigrants that you'd work alongside?
Yeah, that's great. My parents, that was their labor force, were Hispanics, and my parents had taught me from a very, very young age to honor the work ethic and the sacrifice. And so I worked alongside of them, and I tell you, it was amazing. My parents were spot on. They just were in awe of that. And for me, it was pretty enlightening, because I couldn't believe how not only how hard they worked, but how the sacrifice they made, because they would make all this money and send it down to their families
Yeah.
in Mexico, and never complained. They just never, always smiling, always great.
Never calling in.
Never calling in.
Showing up
Yeah.
like a good employee would do.
Exactly.
So, given the current climate with immigration, how does that translate to you? Or what's your reaction when you see stories that you do in the media about immigration, and just your general perspective of how we could handle that?
It's always hard because when we watch the media, I don't ever think we get a real true story of what's really going on. And it's what our country was built on.
Yeah.
Was immigration. My parents being Jewish mother, and they were Russian and German Jews who came over. My father being Italian, them coming over. This is really important. But I think the interesting part is that they all did it, the legal way.
Through the proper channels.
Yeah. And they worked hard and they sacrificed. And I know a lot of people, even a lot of Hispanics that I know, also did the same thing. They went through the proper channels. And I think that at some point we can't, we can only do so much, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the answers are to all this. I know it's complicated.
Yeah.
And it's emotional. But I wish I could have the answers for something like that.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah.
I really do. I get the hesitation to have any finite perspective on it.
Exactly.
I
know we can't just allow everything to be completely open and just to come in.
Right. Well, you wouldn't let people come in your house and
No.
stay without being invited or being vetted properly.
Exactly.
I think it's the same concept, is that, yes, this is a free country and everybody deserves a shot at prosperity. But I think as long as we're on the same page about that process, then it's totally doable.
Right.
The moment people try to skirt around with shortcuts and try to cheat the system that's in place, it becomes a problem economically.
It does.
And you can't really deny that when you're looking at the numbers. Mind you, I've never looked at the numbers, but I understand how numbers work.
Right.
And if things are coming in that aren't accounted for, it hurts the bottom line.
Well, it does.
Yeah. So
I think, like you said, we all pay taxes. I know, and paying taxes, I expect that I want that money to go and to go to the right things that really mean that matter. And I like helping people, but I also think people should have, as they say, some skin in the game. They need to help themselves as well.
yeah.
Because this way we all can do it together. But if you're just giving it out and without any contribution from anybody else, then I'm not sure how that's working. I don't think it is.
Yeah. Just to cut you off real quick, I noticed the sun is all up in your eye.
Oh, it's fine.
You're okay?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Just let me know if
Thank
you
you.
want to. Yeah, if you want to change position. Yeah, immigration's a tough topic. Me personally, I mentioned to you when we started talking when I first got here that I'm kind of investigating my own theories on how things are going in the world and in America, because that's where I live.
Right.
I have friends and family that are really strongly opposed to sending immigrants back. But I think in a lot of cases, people don't really look at the details of what's going on. And I think it's okay to talk about it with every walk of life. The thing I like about your position is you've been in business a long time. You've worked alongside immigrants. From a humanity standpoint, when you work with people who came from a lesser situation or a worse off situation, and they're now in a place where they can provide for their families, even if they're not here legally, that's got to be tough. And I think that's something that's overlooked when people have an opinion about it is, there are people in this process that have to boot these people out and have to walk them through the process and be there watching them being torn apart from each other, being torn apart emotionally and being heartbroken. And I think the trauma that comes from that, from the people in government who have to deal with that, that's a lot like the way people look at police officers. Is we don't realize that those are people that are doing a job that they have to do.
Exactly.
And that's the part that I think breaks people apart, is that we don't see each other as people anymore. And that's heartbreaking to me. It's like there's so much more things happening than just that one part of it.
It is, especially when you think about when you talk about the police and the service that they're providing for us. Really our quality of life sometimes is in their hands.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us understand all that, or what they have to go through. I've done some ride-alongs before with police, and I tell you, if you ever question something about, their police and what they have to do, that you should really look into doing a ride-along.
Agreed.
Because, that would help you understand a lot, and maybe have some sympathy to go through. It's hard because, again, we talked about the media. When the media takes something and tries to divide people because of it, tries to drive a wedge in it, I think that's really hard.
Yeah.
We talked about Ferguson before, and I had a friend who went back to work on the grand jury. And it was really interesting because the media had shown a lot of people who, given them time on the air, and were making statements about that the cop shot the guy running away and everything like this. And they took every person before that to grand jury, and every person said, well, I heard that's what happened.
Yeah.
Not one person actually saw it.
Yeah.
And then when the forensic evidence came back, it showed that, what actually happened, which, the cop was being attacked inside his car, and look at the destruction that happened.
Yeah.
Because of that. That's awful. The millions of dollars, and also all it affected so many people's lives.
Yeah.
Including the cop who I think the person who worked in the grand jury said, he lost really everything that he loved.
Yeah.
He couldn't be a cop anymore. He didn't do anything wrong at all. He did everything that he was supposed to be, and trained to do.
Yeah.
So, how do you wrap your brain around that?
Right. Well, yeah, and I think that's a great question, because I don't think it's possible until you're involved.
Right.
I don't think anybody's opinion is truly valid unless they're there,
right,
or they're performing a job. And I think most people performing that job don't have a finite opinion about it, because
Exactly.
they know there are different elements to this story that have to be taken into consideration.
Well, I agree, and I think that the truth is always something that we should try to seek out.
Yeah.
And before we react to anything.
Yeah.
And once we understand it, which we believe to be the truth, then we can at least try to come up with some solutions, or try to resolve that.
Yeah.
But not to simply just hate it, or to hate the people behind it.
It's the easy way out.
It really is.
Yeah.
We talked about that, and how sad it is that people take that journey, and it's.
I think a lot of it too is people are overwhelmed with information, and I think when it becomes a community or sub-community on its own to hate or feel a certain way about something, people settle.
Right.
People settle because they don't have the time or energy to invest more questions and more investigation into something, because they just don't care to know. And if it's not relevant, then I think people should just shut their mouth.
Right.
Because you don't have to have an opinion. I think it's okay to feel a certain way, but to throw rocks or throw stones at an idea that you have no idea, the truth of, kind of a dangerous thing.
It is. And, you always have to look at perspectives. I know that it's always interesting for me as a person to make sure that I'm trying to look at all sides and to listen to people.
Yeah.
Because even I've changed my mind about a lot of things that I thought I was really strong about. But
likewise,
when I really took the time, then the responsibility of hearing somebody else on the opposite side that I thought or that I believed in, and it really did. It made me understand and changed my opinion on a particular thing, because I felt I really knew more of the truth and the facts.
Yeah.
That's enlightening in itself. And sometimes it taught me something about being reactionary, how we react about certain things, especially if we really don't know the situation. We stopped, my wife and I stopped watching the news for years because we just felt we were being so manipulated.
Yeah.
And we were being emotionally, turned around, and it wasn't making us feel good at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you something, Mike, when we stopped, everything was much better. You know, we just felt, we were more calm, and I think that was important. I think our quality of life for us was really and improved when we stopped what we felt we were getting manipulated by it.
So you kind of went on an informational diet.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because, like I was saying, I think people get overwhelmed and they don't know how to stop. I think the addiction to technology has a part of it too. I think people are addicted to being notified when things change or things me personally, I have Channel 3's app on my phone. Right. It sends me a notification of every shooting, every child lost in the woods, everything.
Right.
And you're right, it does have an emotional effect on me, especially being a dad. If I hear something about kids, I'm like, great, it's a crappy world again.
Exactly.
Confirmation bias kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I've gone on social media diets before, and I've yet to kick the news. I think I enjoy the news for the sake of conversation.
Right.
I do enjoy relating to others. I think what I have done is consciously realize that bad news is happening whether I know about it or not.
Right.
And it's always been that way. That's just the way the world is. There's chaos and order constantly. And with technology, we're just made aware of a lot more often. So I try to keep that perspective in mind. But I do realize that sometimes, like for instance, marketing, which I think works the same way. Me and Adriana, my girlfriend, have been talking about getting a truck.
Right.
Now it's all over my phone. Every application says, "Hey, take a look at this truck."
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh, I can't." And I just don't know how to find that statement in my head that makes sense as far as like, let's get rid of the phone. I can't do it.
Sure.
I just can't do it. So I'm trapped.
Yeah. Do you remember seeing that? I'm trying to think what movie it was in the future. And as somebody was walking through the mall, it was recognized through face recognition, and they knew their whole profiles, and it was starting to throw ads at them in particular.
Black Mirror.
Hey, Mike, we got a truck right here. Is your perfect color.
Yes.
The whole bit.
Yes.
That was really enlightening, thinking that's where they're heading towards.
Yeah, totally. We are. We're all just kind of meat puppets. At some point in our day, we don't catch ourselves, but we're pushing more buttons than we should because we've been told.
I'm coming from, I'm a different generation. We talked a little bit about the fact that, the texting and all this, and just having children who are getting so much information that we never had.
Yeah.
Our parents, we just would go, okay, we'd go out on our bicycles and ride around, and our parents would say, just be home by 6, by dinner time.
Yeah.
They didn't know where we were, and we were exploring, and we were, as my parents would go off and blow the stink off, you get out there and breathe some fresh air and not sit in your room. We didn't have computers where we just sat all day. We had to go out And we had to create, we fantasize, we had dreams and, just being out there. And I don't know that children, it's a whole different thing for them these days.
Yeah, it's on this subject. When I go into my son's room and initiate the end of use of electronic usage,
Right.
when I go in there and say it's time to shut the TV off, it's clear that he is locked in, and he doesn't even consciously realize he's trying to negotiate more time.
Right.
And when I have to explain to him the reason, because I think with most kids, if not all kids, you have to explain why you're asking them to do the things that you're asking.
Right.
And my explanation to him is like, look, dude, the TV's been doing all the thinking for you all day. It's time for you to use your mind and your imagination to put that information somewhere.
Right.
You need a break. You need to do the thinking for yourself. And then he's finally able to say, all right, I guess that makes sense.
True. You asked me about the special times growing up, and I'm going to go back because you brought something to mind. And when we always had dinner as a family, there was no TV on or like this. The best time was us talking as a family because, we were there and talking about the day, my parents asking us about what went on in school or what this happened, but it was such a great exchange of thoughts and ideas, and that was really memorable.
Yeah.
That was some of the best times.
Connecting to people.
Yeah, because I lost my dad when I was very young. He was electrocuted on our vineyard when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was. It was a very bad accident, and that changes your life, in so many ways.
13.
13. He was 39 years old. It was
wow.
2 days before his 40th birthday. He was, yeah. I remember I was in a baseball game, and I remember some relatives coming and getting me, right out of the game and rushing me to the hospital. And it's something like that really does rip your life apart, and you grow up real fast. But I always felt blessed. I felt blessed to have the parents that I had who taught by example, who were great people. They were caring to everybody. They taught great philosophy of life. I think they gave me such a great foundation, for that. That I'll always, feel blessed about that.
Did you, when you were that age and things seemed safer than it turned out to be, when you were kind of naturally taking things for granted, and when that happened to your father, because I often think too, I think my son is passive about what wonderful things are in his life.
Right.
And naturally so. I think, life goes pretty fast. You don't have time to sit there and, be all sappy all day. But
sure,
I just wonder when that happened to you, and I don't want to go too, because I don't want to make you.
Oh no, it's never,
Okay.
I easily can talk about it.
The way you felt about your father, did that, obviously disrupted your thought patterns that day, but was it like one of those things where you think back and you're like, oh man, all that stuff I just let in one ear and go out the other with my dad,
Right.
did that come kind of sort of bombarding into your mindset?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's so surreal. I think at the time it happens, it took even years later. I would wake up and think that it was all a dream. It wasn't until I'd walk into my mother's bedroom and just see her by herself.
Right.
That it would all come rushing back.
Right.
That emotion of the loss and everything. I don't know. At some point in your life, I'm trying to think of what point in my life to where I just, thought that, well, that's life sometimes, because sometimes you can see how you can question your faith in God. You can question so many things, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
But I started thinking about the foundation that my parents had given me, and the fact that how grateful I was to have them in my life. That would start taking over a little bit. I'd start realizing how lucky I was, rather than looking at it as how terrible it was.
Sure.
I don't know if that's just something naturally you do to protect yourself and your emotions. But it's I'm always smiling about the fact that the times that I had with my parents, my dad, and working in the vineyards together and
Right.
teaching me things. How passionate he was about life.
Being with nature too, I think really sets the memory in your mind in such a good way when you're out in the sun and
Right.
other elements of nature. It really kind of impacts your memory.
Yeah.
Because I take my son hiking all the time, and we seem to bond that way. I mean, I think intellectually we have some things in common, and he's a geek by nature. He loves video games, he loves comics, he loves those sorts of things. His mother does too, which is great.
Right.
I'm not necessarily on that same page in depth. I venture in and out every once in a while, but our connection is just being out in the world and digging around and just, being one with science and our creature selves, I think that him and I have an understanding mutually about that. So I often wonder, as life goes, things happen. If it happened to me, what, listening to your story, what that would do to him. And I have good faith that, a lot like yourself, he's got a foundation of me.
Right.
Enough now to grow up and have, those are what my dad believed in. And
I think so. I think those memories, hold so true because I think a lot of them are so deep in our conscience. They come out later on and things. I'll remember things about my dad or my parents and especially, like I said, how they treated everybody with such kindness and such respect. I think that that brings me back with people and how much I enjoy people and learn from people. Even like you said, even when people have different opinions, I sometimes I can learn more from that.
Yeah.
And about myself.
About yourself.
Than being around people who agree about, things that I agree with.
Yeah.
Because it challenges you in life, But as we talked before, you worry about people having such anger and hatred for things that they really don't know.
Yeah.
And that always worries me.
Yeah, it sounds like it stumps you as much as it stumps me because you're willing to put the work in.
Right.
I think that's the difference.
Yes.
Is that because you love people, you're willing to think outside of the normal so that you can have compassion for all walks.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was really great being in business, and I think having a business, you're able to also give a lot to charities and things like this because we're in the wine business and we can do things that really can help raise money for that, and I think that's great, and that helps you learn about other people and what they don't have. I got recently involved in a thing called Compassion Planet, and this is for aged out foster children, things I didn't even know about, but when a foster child turns 18 they just get kicked out to the street.
Right.
And so this group of, I think, some amazing people got together and formulated a plan as to what to do. And that is they would get these children and they'd put them in a year-long program of education and teaching them skills, teaching them how to interact and communicate and to go into society and be really productive. I mean, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
As opposed to us just turning our backs on them.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that when they turned 18, foster children were just, okay, see ya.
Yeah,
You're out on the street.
I don't think I really ever thought deeply enough about it.
Yeah.
I've heard of it. I'm not close enough to any of those instances. So
Then didn't even know.
Yeah.
And those are things that, in my industry, because I think the wine industry is very philanthropic. They give so much. And when I've been involved in all kinds of things from Sacramento Children's Home to AIM and Three Strands, which is with sex trafficking going on outside the country and with human trafficking going on in the country, the industry is always there to help. And every time I've asked wineries, I'm involved in this charity, can you help? They're always there.
Yeah.
I've just never known anybody not. And that's something to be real proud about our industry and what we do.
That brings me to another question, because I know that celebrities get really involved philanthropically at some point in their career.
Right.
And my guesstimation of it is that, you live a certain lifestyle for so long, things seem to get a little unreal or surreal.
Right.
And in order to kind of touch base with reality, you kind of need to be around human suffering and offer your resources or resources that are at your disposal to kind of help those things. It kind of brings you back to one with humanity in general.
It really does.
Yeah.
And to understand the sacrifices that other people have made. I think about so many other people who give so much, and it helps inspire us to do even more and to try more. Sometimes I think I don't ever really do enough.
Have you always done charity work, or is that recent?
No, I've always been involved.
Okay.
I mean, ever since I started my company,
Yeah.
it was always something that, because of the industry, and you have the ability to raise money through it, because you're donating wine that people are going to pay money for.
Sure.
And, we're kind of almost like a target, for charities.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because they come in a lot and say,
Right.
ask for donations and things of that nature. And, even being a small company, I can't give to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but we certainly get involved as much as we can. And it's just so many people. There's such a need out there.
Yeah, and to go even deeper, when you're struggling with whatever that may be, when you're having a bad day,
Right.
how does that affect your thought process? Does that shorten the length of time that you feel sorry for yourself? Does it, you know what I mean? When
Right.
you're kind of in a woe is me moment, and
Right.
I'm suspecting that everybody goes through this.
Right.
I know I do. So I'll open up my experiences. Is that
Sure.
I feel that way sometimes, and I know better. I mean, everybody knows better. Could be worse, right? That's one of the popular terms to say.
Right.
Could be worse. So I'm wondering how that translates, because you experience, it's a tangible experience for you.
Sure.
Doing charity work, being around that culture, and then you have struggles.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, like you said, you come home and I think my wife, who talk about, she actually has done so much, and she's a pediatric dentist, and part of her patient population are special needs children. So she's actually providing, dentistry in an operating room for these children, and she's kind of retiring now, but to be around special needs children, and she's got such an amazing heart, and she would put it in perspective for me, coming home and
Sure.
saying, hey,
Yeah. Sharing some stories.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then helping me, not bring that home and to say,
Yeah.
because like you said, we get frustrated.
Yeah.
We have to deal with certain things in business whenever
Right.
you're a business owner. And I learned a lot about, I didn't realize I was coming home and,
Yeah.
bringing that home until she kind of said, hey, whoa,
Yeah.
and make me realize
Yeah.
a lot of that. So she's been really helpful.
Yeah.
Because she's, we've been together for 28, 30 years, and, she's
Wow.
rarely ever in a bad mood ever,
Yeah.
and I that's your rock, that's somebody
Yeah.
who
Oh, yeah.
who it helps you.
Do you attribute that to her career field and what she does for a living, or who she works with? Does that keep her humbled and grounded, and that's why?
I think it's just who she is. She's
Yeah.
always been that way. I
Yeah.
think when we first started dating, and I'm thinking there's got to be some
Sure.
bad mood coming, and it never came. I'm going,
Yeah,
I think
we're
I
all
have
waiting
to
for it.
marry this person.
Yeah. Of
And
course.
then even after marriage, it's still, she's still always happy and smiling and always supportive, and to see how she relates to these children is just amazing. I sell wine. She's changed people's lives.
Sure.
That's amazing. And then she's got involved with AIM and 3 Strands, which is the sex trafficking back in Cambodia that they're trying to prevent. And it's through Bayside Church here, and they've just have done so much. And so she actually went out and they went in and extracted these young girls. And they bring them back to a facility there that they built, and they crown these young girls as princesses to try to give them a sense of themselves.
Wow.
They teach them a trade so they don't go back into it, because how are they going to support themselves? Their families sold them into that sex trade, And if they don't teach them to to be self-sufficient, then they'll go right back into it. So they teach them a trade, and then they assign them a counselor for the rest of their lives.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and so she experienced that whole thing, and what an amazing thing for them to do. And we even have there's a place right next to us, a business that one of those girls actually was extracted and counseled, and to hear her life. Here she now is, a productive, happy young girl.
Yeah.
All because of this,
Yeah.
because of AIM and Three Strands, and to help hear her story, it bring you to tears. You can't help but to just literally just bawl, because
that sounds like the
just
fruit of it all, really.
Right. So when you look at perspective, look at that. Take
Yeah.
that one instant of a person's life, what they experienced, which will never, who can ever understand and relate to that?
Right.
And yet come out of it as a happy, productive person, caring and stuff like that, when I think most of us would just be so angry at the world. And, that's our lesson in life, is to look at people like that have given,
And also to know we can be a part of it.
Yes.
I think that's the other part, is that people feel a little lost for words when they're trying to figure out, well, what can I do?
Right.
And there are ways.
Yes.
And I can attest to that. I think, in fact, me and Adriana just recently talked about upcoming holidays. What can we do? We want to do something. We want the kids to do something. And we know, I think by nature, that giving back does something for you.
Right.
And it humbles you, and it's a good way to kind of steer your own karma.
Right.
You know?
Well, it should, like you said, I think, and I really honestly think there's such a small percentage of people that truly give. Because just ask your friends, take 10 of your friends and ask them what have they've done, and you might be a little bit surprised about how little or none.
Sure.
So my point being is that like you said, if 20% of the population just gave, truly just gave, found a passion, found something that they can help with, it would change the world.
Yeah.
And it really would. And I think that we get so locked up in ourselves.
True.
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 I go to these charities, and I'll see, like, literally there's always 5% of the whole group that actually is raising their paddle or giving anything.
Yeah.
And I think, well,
which isn't a lot.
It's not a lot.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. And we've talked about that in our fundraising, and when we're, forming a board or committee. And I said, how do you break that pattern?
Right.
I said, well, it's about getting the right people there.
Yeah.
And giving of something. Sometimes I even fall into it, but why do we have to get something to give something? We do these charities, and I'm giving away wine or something like this to get money, but sometimes I wonder, I guess just as human nature, and we have to accept the fact that we are getting money for it. But, there have been a lot of times I said, well, why can't we just have a charity and people just, okay, give?
Yeah.
But thank God for people out there, though, that have been so philanthropic and have given so much. Because I know with AIM and Three Strands, it was like $5,000 changed a person's, their whole life was changed by that. And that's not that much
Just by
money when you
$5,000.
think about it, to change a person's whole life.
Right.
That gives them counseling for the rest of their life. And that was with AIM and Three Strands. And when you think about that.
I love that part.
Yeah. It's, and these guys are, these people are so smart in thinking about that, because they realize that people, they could save them, but then they'd go right back into it unless they taught them skills and gave them. I love the fact that they're crowning them as princesses. I asked my wife, what was that like? She goes, it was unbelievable, but it made all the sense in the world, because they thought so little of themselves, thinking about, how do we conceptualize somebody selling their kid into, into that.
Well, yeah, that gives you a sense of their own self-worth.
Right.
They're a product of some sort. They're not really a person.
Right.
In
exactly.
those situations.
And then when you meet them as maybe like this young woman who works a couple doors from us, and what an amazing person to become.
Yeah.
That and have such a great outlook on life. I mean, she's always smiling. I've never seen her frown or, and think she feels so lucky, I think.
Yeah.
But that, if that doesn't change your life a little bit, I don't know what does.
Yeah. And I've met, I know one guy that I know for sure came from a very dire situation. He was an African guy from Zimbabwe.
Right.
And, he would always come to work with a huge smile on his face, always kind of dancing, up for anything you ask him to do. I mean, you couldn't break this guy for nothing. And one day we talked about where he came from. And at night he'd go home. He's like, I can't wait to get home and play my guitar. I'm like, well, what else do you do? He's like, that's it. I just go home. I got a chair. I got a guitar. I'm happy. And I'm like, well, what was life like before? And he's like, they were dragging people outside in the middle of the night and shooting them.
Yes.
It was genocide.
Yeah.
And just the perspective of taking a person and giving them the resources they need, just how important that is.
Right.
And how mind-blowing, the change in this person. And that's the thing about immigration that gets really tough to digest. Is like these people come from really bad situations.
Sure.
And they're people who have the potential like anybody else.
Right.
And to come into a community, whether through sex trafficking or whatever bad situation, they can easily be turned into a productive member of the community, which benefits everybody.
Everybody.
And so, yeah.
I just wish so, like you said, I wish we had the answers sometimes of that because, how do you better the world? And sometimes I think that, we have to exhibit some patience at times.
Yeah, I like that because I've learned a lot too listening to people and their stories and making the conscious decision not to try and impose my own ideologies on people, just listening. And then there's an opportunity for people too when they go back and hear themselves. Right. Because I think that doesn't happen often either, which is one of the gold things about podcasting is I benefit from learning a lot about me, listening to these things over and over. It's like, oh, that's what's in my head? Right. Okay, we need to look into that a little bit. And I think when people come onto a podcast, they can hear their own thoughts and work on their own theories. And I have caught myself in conversations trying to manipulate somebody to think differently because I thought it would benefit them. Exactly. And then I hear myself and I'm like, wait a minute, hey, you don't need to tell somebody how to feel. Right. They know how they feel. And all I need to do is just listen. And man, what a life-changing, epiphany to have in terms of relating to people. And then, like you said, being patient and being willing to listen will make enough of an impact.
It will. I mean, like you said, the fact that you're reaching out and communicating, actually talking. Yeah. As we talked before with all the texting, we're being a little bit of that generation where we actually talked. We didn't, I will actually tell a customer who starts texting me about something and I say, give me a call. Yeah. Actually call me because it's taking me so long to go back and forth as this texting. My thumbs just don't work that fast. Right. Right. I see these people go, and I go, how do you do that? Yeah. But I could solve that issue by talking with them in literally 1 minute that I've spent almost 10, 12 minutes texting back and forth. And plus, like we talked too about the tone and if I think I'm going to be funny about something and it may not translate well in a text, right? Yeah. And they'll take it wrong. No, right. I meant that as a joke. Right. Yeah. Well, we worry about that.
We should know better too. People should know better. That I like that too. What's funny is when I call somebody and I'm forced to leave a voicemail, it's always something colorful and playful because what's the point? You want to hear somebody else just drowning you out with some monotone, hey, it's me. Exactly. At home, give me a call. That's boring. Right. You know what I mean? And I think with any live communication with somebody, you can, it's an opportunity to be creative. And I think some of us think we're deprived of that. Every day is an opportunity to be creative and
really is. Yeah. And like I said, it's been such a joy just getting to know you through coming into my business and had no idea. Had we not really, think about this point, Mike, is that just talking to you, how did I even get to know about your podcast? That was us just establishing a relationship.
Yeah.
And how important what you're doing and what you're providing for my business. I mean, you're integral in my business, first of all, because that wine doesn't come in. I don't exist.
Sure.
But you always came in and you had to smile, and we were and say approachable. And look at now. I mean, what a difference everything makes when we put ourselves out there.
Yeah.
And we ask about people and say, tell me what's going on. What are you doing? And how much I've learned from you. That's the beauty of what I love about my job. And my career is just knowing people and learning about so much just from interacting.
Well, I appreciate the nice things you say. I think that we're both naturally drawn to people.
Right.
I think that helps. You like people, I like people. Yeah. So we open ourselves up on purpose. It's deliberate so that
Agreed.
That's our contribution to the community is like, hey, listen, you're here. I'm going to make it worth your while. We're going to be friends. You don't owe me anything.
Right.
Let's just share this moment. I love that about life.
Yes.
Is to just share the moment because I mean that's a door waiting to be opened with most people. Most people are drowning in their misery in some respect, and if you just open a door with some humor, they're like, "Oh, that's right.
That's right.
There's more going on than
exactly.
than all this garbage." Yeah,
it's the best therapy.
Yeah,
when you think about it, it's our own counseling and therapy, and that most people I think really don't realize how important that is in interacting and communicating through voice, because there's something healing about it, and just to hear that tone, that sound, as opposed to the click click,
and the acceptance too. When someone, you can tell somebody's listening, they accept you for who you are in the moment,
right?
And that's a big thing, especially these days with the limited version of ourselves through text.
Right,
is what you were saying.
Oh yeah, it's very limited.
If you could have done anything else for a living, what might that have been?
Oh, that's a great question because I think if I could have done anything, I think I would have built houses.
Oh yeah?
There's something about building something, that is so creative.
Yeah.
And when I go into homes and I see everything and how they've been, especially how they created things in lifestyle, it was always fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, working with your hands.
Yeah.
Because when you're growing up in a vineyard, you're so much working with your hands.
Right.
But I don't know. It's for some reason I always thought, I'd like to have build homes. I wish I had done some apprenticeship with somebody.
Sure.
Yeah.
You don't venture into that at all these days?
I love woodworking.
Yeah.
I mean, I do that as a therapy for me.
Yeah.
But when I see people, you go into these stores where people have made furniture. I mean, there's so much talent. I realize how little I have. I'm going,
the same boat.
Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. But you appreciate the art and you appreciate that skill.
Right.
It's incredible. I think we were talking. There's an actor who, trying to think who it was just recently. It's so bad when you get to my age, you forget everything. But my wife said, he does woodworking is his. That's one of his passions.
Yeah.
And I said, you're kidding. He goes, no, he does all kinds of things. And he makes things for people, too. It's like he'll go on, he'll do some acting bit, and he'll give somebody something that he made.
I love it.
That's so cool.
Honestly, there's not really much better gift giving than that.
No.
Something that you've spent intricate time designing.
Right.
Putting yourself into that piece of work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I have a really good friend of mine who he does some incredible woodworking and when I was going to school at Davis, they had a great craft center there. And my roommate was the manager of it, so I could get in there without having to pay the fees.
Yeah.
Sorry, my Jewish heritage again. And so I would start making things, and he had amazing equipment and lathes. And so I would be turning bowls and doing things like that, which is so cool.
Yeah.
So my friend got into it and later in life, and he's got all this set up at his house. So we'll go to his garage, and he's got all these lathes, and I'm going, oh, this is so cool,
Yeah.
And I realized what great therapy. So I hadn't done it for 30 years, and coming back to it, has been really great.
Yeah, I've just personally started venturing into woodwork. obviously I have pallets at my disposal
Right.
often.
Yes.
And I'll take some home, and I've built like a little workbench in my garage out of pallets. And
Right.
I have all these plans to make other things with just being creative with, the basics.
Oh yeah.
So much fun. But like yourself, I look at other people's work and I'm like, oh my God.
Exactly.
I'm here for the therapy.
Right. Yeah.
I won't, and maybe if I get good enough, I'll start gifting
Exactly. Yeah.
gifting some of my work, but
know.
I'll give it a little more time.
There you go.
What's the last thing you made?
The last thing I made was a trellis out of what was the wood? It was this great like babinga. It's an Asian wood. It's really reddish, and so I was making this little trellis for the side, and then I made all my garden benches and everything like that. So
Okay.
yeah,
Right on.
it's kind of fun.
I'll
So,
have to take a look at those.
yeah,
Yeah.
it took me a long time. It's
Yeah.
like- I have nine boxes, garden boxes, and they each took me about 8 hours per box.
Oh wow.
To
It
make.
took me 8 hours to make that stupid pallet table in my garage.
I know, but that's the beauty of it. You're just kind of getting into
You
it.
get lost in it.
You get lost into it.
Yeah, it is a glorious thing.
Exactly.
And maybe not just for men, but it certainly felt manly doing it.
right.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of making something just from my bocce court to hold the bocce balls
Oh, okay.
in them. So I'm going through that whole creative design, trying to design it.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now I'm starting to.
Do you ever watch woodworking on YouTube?
I have. It's
I'm obsessed right now.
pretty awesome to see
Yeah.
these guys, and you learn so much.
Yeah, you do.
And you also learn how some people are really good at teaching, and
Yeah.
others are going, how do you do that?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think some of them are just showing off,
Right.
which is fine too.
Yes.
Because there's another thing that I've a little bit different, but I've kind of been obsessing is. It's these guys, some indigenous people on like an island somewhere, some foreign country,
Right.
that are using the elements around them in nature to build huts and pools and like
Right.
3-story buildings made out of branches. And
Wow.
I'll send you one of the links, but it's fascinating.
Like in my job too, I meet so many people from so many different backgrounds. That's what's so fascinating. And one of my customers actually goes back to Laos, and he's trained these people to find these certain limbs out of trees that he's taught them, brings them over here, and he makes bows for violin-like bows.
Oh, wow.
And people fly in from all over the world just to get Eric's bow. I mean, the wood
Wow, yeah.
to make these bows. It's such an art,
Yeah,
and incredible stuff.
yeah.
But who would have thought?
Right,
You're here
yeah.
in Granite Bay, and you're going. You do what?
Yeah.
Yeah, make
You
this-
don't really think of that.
Is that a career?
Is that by the taxidermy thing over
Right.
there? Yeah. How funny.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. you
Makes
know?
sense.
Yeah.
If somebody finds a niche, a really special niche.
Right, and they had to teach the guys to find just the right limbs, the structure and everything. And
God, I'd hate to
Yeah.
be the guy coming back with the wrong stuff.
oh yeah,
You know?
I know that's not it.
Yeah, put it in the fire. That's garbage.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I think, well, we kind of touched on this. I was going to ask you, what do you think are the top 3 most helpful things to know about wine?
Well, number one, drink what you like, and don't let anybody ever intimidate you about what's good and what isn't, because it's a totally a personal thing. There's no wrong or right answer. But certainly, the more that you get exposed, the more experiences you have, I think the more enjoyment you'll get out of it, because you'll understand a little bit about those things and what you like and maybe what you don't like.
Yeah.
Moderate drinking, it can be a real healthy part of your life. They've proven that a moderate drinking of wine actually improves and increases your health, as long as you know what moderate is.
Sure, yeah.
Everybody's moderate can be different.
Well, moderate's got to be better in some extreme cases.
That's
so,
true.
Yeah.
That's true. Pretty much like I said, I've always tried to tell people about, just like you said, don't get caught up in all the stuff. It just enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people really do get,
Sure. Yeah. Well.
which is fun.
Yeah.
I understand.
I agree. Yeah. I think that's.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah. But as long as you don't lose the sense, because some people, we talk about wine. Some people actually like possessing wine as opposed to drinking it.
Sure.
And so
Collector's item.
collectors in a way that never drink it. And so I try to find my customer base are actual consumers.
Right.
They just love wine and they love sharing it. If you could see all the times that people will come into my place and they'll sit at the wine bar and they'll get something really special and they'll wait for people to come in and he'll just share. They'll share these wines with other people. I mean, wines that they probably wouldn't spend that much money on themselves, but he just wants them to have the experience of it.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun.
That's
and then they
cool.
start talking and I could sit back, Mike, and just see these people just getting to know each other simply because of this glass of
Right.
wine.
Smell the roses.
Yeah, exactly. And the
Yeah.
sharing. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
here, try this. And so what do you do? And blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah.
I like hearing that because, I walk into all these establishments and think, what the hell's going on here? You're going to come in and buy, you're going to come in and hang out. It's not a bar, but it is kind of
Right.
thing. And hearing your experience of it makes total sense. And that it's a beverage that is drank in moderation.
Right.
Specifically out of a wine glass. You sip out of the wine glass. It's not a get drunk and
No.
barfly kind of
Right.
situation. But I do like that. That's a very intimate situation that I don't witness because I don't go
Right.
off the clock.
Yeah. And that's a great word, intimate, because it really does. It's an ability of sharing something of yourself just through this glass of wine.
Yeah.
Because people are talking about it. And I have, again, some customers who they just come in, they're just so excited to try something new.
Yeah.
And it's like anything, it's a sense that you develop. I mean, when you really connect, that aha moment is when you connect your brain to your palate
Yeah.
and you start realizing what you're experiencing. It opens up so much for people because when I was traveling in Europe as a very young kid, that's where I learned about what dining is all about. They don't just turn tables there in restaurants. People go there and that's their table for the whole night.
Right.
And you can't even leave. I mean, they will,
Yeah.
no, you've only been here for 3 hours. What are you talking about
Yeah,
leaving?
yeah.
And you're going, whoa. And you realize people being in the moment and they're enjoying their family or they're enjoying their friends. It's not about just sipping something, slamming it down and rushing out. And then you realize about how important life is from that. That's when you start exchanging things and ideas and enjoying everything that's going on around you. It's, I think, being in the moment.
Yeah.
And this is what I think wine has helped for a lot of people because they really sit there and goes, well, I never got that flavor. What is that? And then they experience it and then they start developing it. And it's to watch them just, oh, I get it. And food. And then when they combine wine and food, it's just a whole great
Drinking
moment.
in the moment.
It is drinking in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
It's so much fun to see people like that.
What a great position you have on it. And it makes sense looking at your history and getting to know you it comes out naturally, but it's
Yeah.
also very passionate and it's the only thing that makes sense to you
Right.
really about the business is that this is about celebrating the moment with
And how lucky for me to be able to be in my passion, and to share that with other people. Because again, we talked going back full circle about how they pick up on that emotion, so they come in and they really want to share that.
Yeah.
And because they go home and they go off on their own enjoyment and their own emotional with that.
Right.
But you get maybe help them start a little bit of that.
Yeah, and I think one of the blessings on from your standpoint is that you're not really there to sell the bottles of wine. You're there to sell the idea that some of these will give you a different experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they really are. They really are trying to feel and taste these things and the enjoyment it gives them just attempting it and watching a wine open up and change these flavors and it's
and the whole process of
and they do it in a way that's really is true. It's just a personal thing for
Yeah.
them and they go, oh, like everything else, talk about stop and smell the roses, right? Well, when you really smell a rose and all the different roses and the smells, and you really do, you sit and you go, oh, I get the whole concept now about stop and smell the roses.
I think what'll have to happen is I'll have to bring Adriana into your shop and
Definitely.
just sit in the moment with you.
You know.
Okay, cool. All right, well, I'll do it then.
Oh, good. I look forward to that.
What are the top 3 things to know about business or entrepreneurship that you could maybe
realize that you never stop thinking about it, first of all. It's a 24/7 concept. When you're an employee, you get the luxury of being able to go home and not think about it. When it's your own business, you never have that luxury.
Right.
It's always on your mind, and you're always thinking about it. When you think about the hours that you put into it, I think that's something that you have to accept and realize the sacrifices that you make. But for your passion and for your own business, it's well worth it. The other thing is to do your passion.
Yeah.
Again, is do something that you really do enjoy.
Yeah.
Because that's important too. Because then you don't think it's work.
Right, and you're not obsessing over something you don't love. Yeah.
It's never been a job for me. I love going to work. I love to think about who I'm going to meet, who's going to come in, and who I'm going to talk to. And as I tell you, my customers are all over the country in every state.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that now for 36 years. And I know all of them by the voice, their own voice. They don't have to tell me who they are.
Yeah.
I know that, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
The other thing is the art of customer service. If you really work hard and you understand the customer and who the customer is, and you understand that concept of taking care of the customer, I don't think you'll ever fail.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked for an advertising firm, it was learning the concept of that a bad experience goes 10 levels to 1 level of a good experience, which means if you have a bad experience, you're going to tell 10 people. If you have a good experience, you're going to tell 1. Well, that concept alone, just you understand that, and you when somebody comes in, you really are focused on them. If they're upset about something, about wine, you didn't make it, but you always take care of them. You don't say, well, it's not, I didn't make the wine.
Sure.
You say, no problem. What would you, and you take care of them. The worst concept in a philosophy of business is when something goes wrong is to ask your customer, well, what can I do to make it right? Now, that is the horrible thing to do, because now you're putting it on your customer to come up with something, and that alone, that philosophy, you either know what you need to do or what not. I remember one customer had an experience, had nothing to do with me, but the fact that I went so out of my way to take care of the situation that he's become one of my most loyal customers, and that may have cost me maybe $300 or $400. I've made it 20-fold back. Yeah. And I've got a great relationship with someone who appreciates the fact that, wow. And I think that's the lost art. I think customer service, when you think about the Amazons and everything else, they're lost. Yeah. The other thing too that I've learned about marketing is that you have to tell your story. And what I mean by that is that I'm in the community. I've been in this community for 36 years, and I give back to the community tenfold. People who go outside to shop, they pay more money, and they're buying from a company that they don't have any relationship with and doesn't provide anything to their community. When you think about it, and I've had to tell customers, they'll say, oh, I got this wine at this winery. I said, okay, but I supported your kids' lacrosse. I supported your kids, your band. I've done all these things for the charities for your kids when you came and asked me. And my prices were cheaper alone, than what you paid at the winery. Yeah. And they didn't even think about it. So I can't be mad at them, but I realize that maybe it's my job to market it too, and to help them understand why you support small businesses, because we'll become a lost art. And then all you're going to have are the Amazons of the world, and you can't, And
the dysfunction continues.
Yes, and a disconnect. And you have problems you won't have anybody to deal with.
I think that's really important. Just connection in general, and what that means in the world of business.
Right.
And to not have somebody to interact with when you're making an exchange of energy, because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
and businesses exchanging energy.
So whenever I look for something, a product, I'll find maybe the best price I can find, whether it is Amazon, and I'll go to a local company and I'll ask them. And 9 out of 10 times they've said, yes, I definitely could match their price, and they're happy to do it, and they have my loyalty with them. And we're giving them business too.
Yeah.
They may not make as much as before, but they're happy and grateful for the business, first of all, then going outside. And I have a relationship with somebody too. I have somebody I can talk to.
Yeah.
So if I need anything, or if I have problems, I have somebody there I can deal with. So I learned that lesson just on my own, talking about what my philosophy was and realizing that I wasn't always practicing that philosophy.
Yeah.
And then I realized how I needed to support also businesses that were local.
Do you ever buy non-local businesses? Do you order from Amazon? Are these things that you practice on the regular, or is it something you just try to mitigate?
Because sometimes you just have to. There's things that you just can't get from local businesses. They don't carry it, or they can't get it.
Yeah.
So definitely, but I usually try to do the research and to know what my community does offer and what the businesses are, and always try. It's like our feed store, Douglas Feed, which is a phenomenal company, and Craig, the owner, is incredible. Talk about what a nice person. Talk about philanthropic. What he gives back to the community is unbelievable. So I can either go to Chewy and get stuff, or I can get stuff from Craig for the same price and get somebody that I know I'm supporting, who's supporting the community.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that he's right next to me makes it easy.
Sure.
But I would drive across town.
Yeah.
Only because you have to value what somebody is doing in your community.
Right.
And,
Right.
Yeah, and he's great. He's a phenomenal person too.
When you're out as a consumer and you are in a business trying to make a purchase and you experience poor customer service, how do you go about dealing with that?
I shake my head sometimes. I think, how are you staying in business? I mean, really am. I'm going, really do, because as a business owner, you see everything. You look at it and you dissect it, and a lot of times it's not maybe the owner's philosophy, but their employees who are not taking ownership.
Yeah.
And I've done so many times where I've got a hold of the owner, either when I thought that something some impropriety was going on. I will make an effort to call the owner, because sometimes the owners are not there and they can't. And I always take that philosophy.
Sure.
Well, you can't fix something you don't know is broken.
Yeah.
So. And there are times when even the owner was like, what are you bothering me with this for?
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay, I see where it came from.
Right.
Others are so appreciative because they had, like I said, no, and other people aren't being proactive to help that business to be a better business. And I welcome, and I've had criticisms as well that I've said thank you.
Yeah.
Because that makes me a much better company when somebody can tell me and be honest with me.
Yeah.
And I have to make sure I'm always open to that and to be appreciative of it.
Yeah. So you do try to speak up when you have it in you.
I mean, my wife may say, really, Marcus, really? Come on. Let it go. It's okay.
Sure.
But no, but.
I like it, though. I like that you're driven to make the world better that way.
Right.
It's important.
Yeah, because you do. And sometimes it's when somebody's performing at a level that they're getting paid for, and I've had talks with other people's employees sometimes and saying, well, why is this about? And they discount themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just a clerk. I said, look you don't realize how important you are in this business.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can be responsible for a business failing.
Yes.
If you don't try to do the best you can and to be proud of it.
Yeah.
I was lucky again to be taught to always perform the best that you can, and only I know when I failed and when I don't.
Yeah.
We hold ourselves accountable.
Yes.
So every once in a while, not that it always happens, but every once in a while, you can reach somebody.
True.
Because I think they get taken back that you care enough. And you say, hey, why are you not, being a good employee.
Yeah. Well, you're missing the point.
Right.
This is bigger than you.
Yeah, and you have a job, and you should be real proud of the fact that you have a job. And
Yeah.
again, as we talked, we go back to appreciate everything that you have.
Yeah.
And when we all appreciate that, everybody around us, benefits from that.
Right.
Too,
Right.
including ourselves.
Well, God bless you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've been talking for a long time, so I'll try to hurry this up a little bit.
No
but,
worries.
Yeah, I think we could end up talking for
It's a beautiful day.
all day. Yeah, and a beautiful setting too.
My cat's right next to you. He's
Yeah.
just hanging out. So
Yeah, we're by. I want to give her more attention. Or him.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, him.
Him.
Yeah,
Give him more attention. He's a big cat too.
he is. Yeah,
Big old cat.
he is a big guy.
Yeah. What? Okay, so this is a good one. What daily habits do you believe support your positive momentum in business? I think this is like when you're doing well,
Right.
and how do you keep that momentum and make it a ritual in terms of progressing?
And when you own a business too, you have so many interruptions going on because you're doing everything. Like I'm at a point now in my business where I'm the sole employee, so I wear a lot of different hats. Part of it is trying to keep focused and on task, because you can get pulled away so much, and then all of a sudden half the day will be gone,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if I got anything done.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what makes me feel the worst.
Right.
Because as my wife will tell you, I'm a reward kind of personality. If I work really hard, I get to reward myself.
Sure.
And if I don't feel like I've accomplished, if I let something get away from me, then it makes me feel bad. I said, I got so distracted, or I couldn't get back on focus. So,
Well, how do you stay on task? I mean, do you have a structured schedule that you?
There's so many things that go on in my business that really is the key is especially, like you said, if you have people come in, you want to give them the attention, the time. Well, I realize I got FedEx is coming, and I've got to get this packed because they want it out today.
I've felt this with you. When
Yeah,
I've walked in, I'm like, he's busy. Get the hell out of here. Yeah.
And it happens, and so and a lot of times it can be my fault for not being getting there early enough. Sure. And being prepared, and the other times are a customer that calls in all the time and says, well, I need to get this package, and can you get it to me by tomorrow? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you I can't say no. So Mike, I will say whatever.
Not with your philosophy. You can't.
Whatever it takes, I will. And I've done some, some pretty interesting things in order to get something done that I've told the customer I could do. That's the most rewarding, though, is when you have, for me, when I go, oh, I got to figure this out. I got to figure out how I'm going to do this. And sometimes it's a call to my wife.
Yeah.
Hey, honey, how you doing?
Yeah.
I need your help.
Yeah. I know you're busy changing lives, but
yeah, exactly. And she goes, I don't work there. I said, I know you don't.
Yeah. What a good partner.
But she's been so supportive in so many ways, and so a lot of times I'll ask her. And there have been other times I've had some customers who are really great, and they've come in and said, "How can I help you?" What better compliment is that
kidding.
when you have a customer that comes in? I had one customer came in and started making boxes for me. I was in holidays, and he saw this panic, and well, what can I do? And he runs his own business, his own company.
That's why he did it, though, because he knows.
He knows.
Yeah.
But he's the most caring person. Again, meeting people that are just wonderful. And here he is. He's making boxes, man. He's taping these things up. And customers are coming in and go, Tad, what are you doing here? He knows he's got his own company, and but you've never met him.
That's really cool.
Again, that's pretty amazing. So,
it's leadership.
It's, I've been, you just have to think, sometimes I think when I was younger, I really could, can't even come up with the word.
Compartmentalize.
Thank you. All the things I have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And because there are so many things, and I just have to just knock them off, try to do priority. What can I get done now? And I'm just going crazy. But it's what drives me, I think.
Yeah.
Is when you have those kind of challenges
Right.
for you.
So would you say that never really goes away?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. And that's
No, it
healthy.
doesn't. That's healthy.
Yeah.
Because,
Love it.
again, I've been, again, lucky to have good high energy.
Yeah.
So I can do that. During the holidays, I literally work 7 days a week and minimum 18-hour days. And there are a lot of times when
Wow.
I'll go 3 days without any sleep.
Wow.
I'll come home, grab something to eat, take a shower, come back. But I've done 3 and 4 days of no sleep just because you have all these corporate accounts coming in. They need it, and it's such high maintenance. And I get so much done between 9 at night and 5 in the morning because there's no interruptions. Otherwise, people are coming in, the phone's ringing during the day. You can't get anything done. So when it comes down to the crunch, I just say, I just have to do it.
Yeah.
And you just do.
Yeah. You just.
That's what owning a business is all about.
Yeah. You throw yourself against the wall.
Yeah.
See what's left.
Exactly.
How beautiful. What a
Yeah.
what a beautiful
Yeah.
piece of information. What's your favorite form of entertainment?
Wow. I love watching movies,
Yeah.
Kathy and I just love to,
What's your favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption is one of my favorites.
That's Adriana's favorite.
Is it?
Yeah.
I can see that movie.
Beautiful story.
Yeah, over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
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 And at the very end, just, it's always, your heart just, when he's walking on that beach and Andy gets off the boat and
Yeah.
gives him this big hug
Yeah.
and I my mind will go, what's going on after? I'll
Right.
actually have that conversation
Right.
and, for them to talk and to actually
Yeah.
figure out I wish it was
A true happy ending.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's when we love to relax and just kind of watch movies together.
So you watched Black Mirror. I heard you mention. This is kind of off track a little bit,
Right.
but yeah, Black Mirror. So you've watched all of them?
The which one?
That's the one where they're advertising as you're walking in, and it's like in your.
Oh yeah, I didn't know what the name of it was.
Yeah, it's like a series.
Yeah.
There's
Okay.
a bunch of. It's like all about the future and technology.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
really eerie.
I think in this one it was the Minority Report.
Oh, okay.
Was that one?
That's
so
a
I haven't
movie.
seen. Yeah, that's the movie
That's
with
the one with
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah.
And so that was the future, and as here walking, they're
Speaking of
yes,
Scientology,
they're talking. Yeah, exactly. Wow, don't get me started on that one.
yeah, we'll leave that for another time.
Exactly.
But yeah, okay, cool. I'm a movie
Yeah.
buff myself, and
Yeah.
so since you haven't seen Black Mirror, it's on Netflix. I'm assuming you have
We do.
access. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, check out Black Mirror. It's really cool in terms of imagining what the future can be
Right.
in technology. And it is really eye-opening and kind of makes you conscious of potentially hazardous situations
Exactly.
with thoughts and technology. And
Oh, I'd love to. I definitely will do that.
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's amazing with all the new stuff out now on Prime, on Netflix,
Yeah.
on Hulu.
A lot of competition.
A lot of competition. But what
Yeah.
it's done is it's these production companies now that have come out and have made some amazing movies and series.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the
It
quality.
should,
is
yeah,
done.
I think it inspires creativity
Right.
on the positive side.
Yes.
Yeah, because
yeah.
I think it's easy to see it as overwhelming. There's so much going on.
Right.
But yeah, on the positive side, very creative world we live in. And
Yes.
anybody's capable of producing.
Right.
I love that part.
And who hasn't binged watched on these things too? Man?
I mean,
You know?
the kids are guilty.
Yeah.
We're guilty.
Yeah, we're guilty.
It's
You know,
there.
it's
yeah.
2 a.m. Oh, you want to see another one? Goes, yeah, let's go ahead. Okay.
Oh man, yeah,
we
yeah.
got to see it.
Yeah,
You never had that before.
no,
This is
not
amazing.
quite.
Yeah,
No, but
I like that.
I love it. I love
Right.
it. Okay, what could you, or if you could change one major social issue, what would that be, and how would you do it? I think we've touched on a lot of stuff, but something that's, I guess, more near and dear to you.
Racism is really something that first of all, I can understand because I've been, again, fortunate to have parents who raised me, who taught me never to ever judge anybody by the color of their skin, by their religion, by their economic status. But you do judge people by the character, who they are as a person. I just can't understand looking at somebody and thinking differently of them because of color. If I could change anything, that would be one thing and how I would do it.
I think you're already doing it,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And you don't even have to answer that part because I think it is really just living that truth.
Right.
And I have to, I can't not relate because I'm a military brat.
Right.
I grew
Sure.
up around everything. And when I first moved back to southern USA, in Florida specifically, and I didn't realize it because it's, more of a tropical sort of atmosphere out there.
Right.
But it is the deep south. It's
Yeah.
South USA. And I heard little snippets here and there of traditional or old school racism. And when I got back, it was a culture shock in that I was living in a world where that didn't exist. In England,
Yeah.
black people are, there's a culture within a culture, but it was not anything like,
No.
southern U.S. black culture.
No, not at all.
Nothing like it. And like you said, it's hard to wrap my head around because I don't see people that way. But I think it's a matter of isolation.
Right.
You're stuck. I met this driver the other day. I told him to listen to the podcast, so maybe he'll hear this. But he was admitting to me, he's like, I don't have black friends, and I grew up with, family that was in racism. We had plantations, and, that's a part of my upbringing. But I think that his ability to admit that out loud to someone who looks like myself
Sure.
is a clear notion that he's trying to change something. And I'm in love with that process.
Right.
I'm in love with honesty and openness. And even though, racism historically is just a part of our reality, it's there and there's no denying it. And when you hear people's stories, they work on it themselves. The fact that they're open to sharing, they're working on it. And I think in terms of making a change, like yourself, you're just open to people.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're living by example.
Right. But isn't it amazing how it affects you? Because if I watch something like a movie and there was some racism in it's very hard for me
Makes
not
your
to
blood
be.
boil.
It does,
Yeah.
and it's emotional, and it's embarrassing too as a human being.
Yeah.
You think about how ignorant somebody could possibly be. I mean, I can excuse a lot of things. Ignorance to me sometimes it should be fixable,
Yeah.
right? But to treat somebody differently like that, to even and how people could be so cruel.
Yeah.
I just don't understand it.
Well,
Same
then-
thing with animals too. It's like, helpless things and how people have been.
Right.
Because we're also involved in the SPCA and and you see these, you go into these programs and you see these animals and thank God for the people who have rescued and there's again people who have done so much to help a lot of causes, and one of them is with animals that have been abused and to get them in healthy. I just the other day somebody had brought their dog in because we're dog friendly. People bring their dogs in to see mine, who's always there, Dexter, and great dog. And they were telling me the background, and it was how it was abused, and they rescued it. And I went, wow, man.
Yeah. Well, what blows my mind is when people are more emotionally apt to help animals, but then are opposed to people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
That
I
blows
know.
my mind.
That
It's
does-
like,
yeah.
that doesn't make any sense.
I think because my answer to that would be because maybe animals they can't help themselves. They
Sure. And they're not the ones who hurt you
Right.
before.
Yeah.
It's people.
Where you think people might be able to stand up to themselves or get themselves out of the situation. I don't know, but I think you're right. We think that. I think
Yeah.
it doesn't make it right, but we think that people have an ability to get out of an abusive, environment, whereas
Sure.
animals don't.
Right,
they're just,
right. Yeah, I understand. I suppose I understand the initial thought process.
Right.
But then to never realize that there are other options, other choices in terms of perspective and approaches to certain problems,
Right.
that's the part that kind of blows my mind. And especially with people and racism, it's like it's easier to live in a bubble than to be uncomfortable and exposed and vulnerable.
Right.
That's really what the problem is.
Yeah.
And, you settle into a culture of sorts because you feel safe because it's the information you understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, and then you asked about how do you solve something like that. And, well, we talked about this before. The media has done so much to create racism.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it, I've seen it, and, you know, my wife and my solution was to stop watching it.
Yeah. Well, I would agree with that. I think to kind of cut it out, and then to exist in a world where you don't, you know, facilitate those things, and
Right.
you don't
Right.
allow them into your life.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
you know, you have a better say as to what shows up on your doorstep, you know.
Agreed. That's the thing. You know, we talked about that, is that you have to be intolerable to things like that.
Yeah.
And if people stood up to it, then I think that would be on the road to recovery, because at
Yeah.
least other people who have found themselves victims of racism would see that there is a group of people there to protect them and to be there, and that are
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, there are good people.
There are good people there.
There are good people.
who would stand up to them, you know, stand up to
Absolutely.
help protect them.
But I think, you know, you touched on something when you said, I have this reaction. It you know, and I mentioned it boils your blood. There's a dangerous place there, too, when you get just as angry and you use that energy to fight off what you're in opposition of,
Right.
which does not produce good solutions.
No.
So standing up for something is, you know, you have to understand why and how to stand up for it, because I think when you're using violence to fight off, I've heard people saying, I want to throw stuff at Nazis or alt-right, you know, individuals. I want to do these physical things to be in opposition. It's like
Right.
that's not going to help.
You're
I hope
so true, because
know?
the way you're going to combat it, and I think you're right, because then you just become just as
bad
as
Yep.
they are.
Yep.
And you're right. I probably would be just as much of a victim of that I would become angry if I saw somebody getting abused like that. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
I think that I would probably react in the wrong way, instead of waiting and saying, okay, there's got to be a better way to help this situation. You know?
You know what I think sometimes, because I've thought about it too, of if opportunities came up for me to stand up or be the voice for somebody else, I think even if it was for myself, let's say the last thing I imagined happening is, let's say somebody wants to challenge me to a fight. My first reaction would be to announce to them the reality of what's happening. And not in a non-threatening way, but
Right.
more or less a reality check. Like, listen, the decision you're making right now is not going to go away within a few days. This is going to last you years. This is going to be trauma you have to deal with in your mind. And me too. And I don't want to go down that road.
Right.
But this is what's happening. And I think that in other situations where it's not you can do the same thing. And it's a matter of enlightening people of the moment, because they're just in their own emotion and they're not in the moment. They're like, they're
Right.
fight or flight. And it's like, I'm going to do something about this. And it's what they know, which would be to act out.
Right.
And I think your responsibility as somebody who's awake or aware of this process is to just enlighten those around you. And it may not do anything.
Sure.
Which is the tragedy of, you know, life. It may or may not work out. But the fact that you have your wits about you and you can say something
Yeah.
can
And
be
what
a
a-
really pivotal moment.
And what a great gift to have.
Yeah.
That you can quell a situation like that just through, you know, your own ability to talk to somebody
Yeah.
and to get them to stop. Because I think that you're right. There are abilities that maybe some situations would never change, but other people would have, you know, that sense of to communicate so well to somebody.
Yeah. And I think that's really what magicians do. It's
Right.
what hypnotists do, is that they capture your attention with some sort of method of bringing you into the moment and
Yeah.
then taking you where you need to be or where they want you to be.
Good
in
point.
a less manipulative manner, based on what we're trying to, you know, figure out. I think you can have the same power to do something along those lines, magical,
Exactly.
by grabbing the moment and putting it on their table in front of them and saying, "This is what's happening, fella, and we can go.
We can
do this
Yeah,
because I will defend myself."
right.
But
Yeah.
it's you know, it's consequences on both sides.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Let's talk about this first,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've seen a video. There was a couple of teenagers in the street, and there was other teenagers around them coaxing them to fight and throw fists. And this black gentleman comes out of his car, runs up and breaks them up, and he's emotional. He's yelling at him, "What do you think you guys are doing?" And he's breaking it down for him. You're challenging him. They're laughing at you. They're not on your side. They're laughing at you. And he's like telling them, and they stop. They have no choice.
Right.
They're now here in the moment, seeing it all happen for what it is. And it's a very empowering video, and it's viral for that very reason. It's like, we can do something.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I certainly advocate that, for people to stand up and to do something, but do it right.
Who was it that, in that same vein, who was the person that had been kind of anti-police, but I think he was a rapper, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he went through the training, the response training that officers went through, and he had no idea. I mean, then he came back to be a big proponent. Wish I could remember. He didn't realize what cops how they had to make such quick decisions to save their lives, and he went through this thing. Changed his whole perspective, because he said
perfect timing with
the sirens. But that, I remember thinking, wow, here's somebody who was on a polar opposite.
Yes.
But had to walk in that shoe. It just, even if it was, not in reality, but to give a sense of what officers had to do.
Yes.
And that is an aha moment for a lot of us. Just on any side, to look on somebody else's perspective.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think when people are trying, if they're even trying to understand the position of law enforcement, or a person doing the job of law enforcement, if a person takes themselves back to a very traumatic moment in their life, to a moment where they made a decision either for better or for worse, and how intense that moment was, how quick they had to react, and if they did it again or had to do it again, would they have done the same thing?
Right.
I think when you put yourself in that position, you have to realize that's where policemen live. They live in that moment. Every car they pull over, every call they get, they're in that moment. And what that would be like to be in such an intense mindset all the time. Right. The amount of suicide that police officers deal with every year, the amount of divorce that happens with law enforcement. This is trauma not easily dealt with.
Right.
These are people in your community, cops who are no longer cops who are off duty. These are normal people who are trying to deal with a very intense mindset all the time. And if you're walking around saying, fuck the police, then you deserve whatever bad karma you put out there for yourself. Yeah. And that's the part I personally have an issue with. It's like there's math here that you're not putting together.
Exactly.
And it drives me nuts. And that's where I start watching myself, because I get angst up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, you fucking idiots. Can you do something different?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, like watching live PD, I mean, you see firsthand of how people can be not only so disrespectful, but how they could just lie. I mean, they're, regardless of whether they're editing, as far as they're only taking the ones. I said, yeah, but I get that part. But still, people are lying.
Yeah.
And it's really, what's really interesting is cops are going, look, just be honest with me, because this will go two ways. And it's true. When the people were totally honest, I've got some marijuana, it's like that. And they said, okay, no big deal.
Yeah.
But don't lie to me. Right. Because then I could deal. And the guys, look, I'm just going to give you a ticket and you're going to be on your way. They've been so, not aggressive. And I think they're trying. I think the show in its sense is trying to change a lot of people's attitudes about it, saying, look, I'm this here to make sure, look, I've got a job to do.
Yeah.
And there are laws, and I have to obey the laws. I'm the protector of the laws. A lot of times I don't have the choice on some things. But I mean, wow, these people, what they're pulling over, and they don't have insurance, they don't have a license, they don't have anything.
They got themselves in a position of being pulled over by the police.
Right.
They did that.
Oh, yeah, they did that.
Yeah.
But think about it, too, is that we all pay insurance, and we all pay all this money. Well, why are we paying such high? Because you've got to deal with all the people who don't have insurance, and we're having to pay that out of pocket.
Yes.
So, it would be a whole different ballgame. We wouldn't be paying half the insurance we'd be paying if everybody, was insured.
Were honest about their shit and took responsibility.
Exactly. But But I mean, to see how people put other people in harm's way when they're running from the police,
Yeah.
or they just don't
Yep.
comply. You know,
Yes.
who doesn't? When a cop says something, damn right, I'm going to do exactly because you're in control,
Yeah.
regardless of whether I did anything wrong or not.
Yeah.
You know, it'll get worked out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to exasperate the situation and make it worse,
Right.
as you see people doing. And, you know, cops are telling people, hold your hands up, and they're reaching down into their waistband. I said, I'm watching this. And
Yeah.
I'm going, what are they doing this
Yeah.
for?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's all about choices. And I think I get so worked up about this because it seems so simple. In my instances dealing with law enforcement on either end, if I've been pulled over, I just own my shit.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, I was speeding. Why? I was in a hurry.
Yeah.
You do what you have to do. You know, I'm not going to argue with you. Whatever you need from me, take it. I made the decision to go this fast, so fast that you decided to pull me over because it's against the law.
Exactly.
That's your job.
Right.
Or if I've been asked any question in any situation by law enforcement, what's the point in lying? Because I think that's fundamentally, that's the problem. Is if you're not going to be trustworthy,
Right.
and you're going to try to pull the wool over my eyes, I have no choice but to think you're doing the worst thing possible. And if that's the case, you're harming my community, potentially harming my community, potentially harming my future, my kids' future.
Right.
I have a job to do to get you out of this situation.
Just the DUIs alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, you can't believe how many there are and what's going on. And I mean, again, to put people in harm's way because people are getting killed. I mean, how I've known people personally who've lost a friend, a spouse, a family member from a drunk driver. I mean, that is, talk about change a life.
Yeah. no
When
kidding.
somebody could have easily prevented it by not getting in behind the wheel, you know,
Yeah.
and drunk. It just boggles my mind. I'm in the industry, obviously. I'm in the alcohol business,
Right.
but I have 100% respect for it, and I don't drink and drive at all.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because just I want to have my whole wits about myself, and it's hard enough out there with crazy people driving.
Yeah. And
know?
also, you know, to protect the future of yourself at
Right.
the very least.
Yes.
You know, you set goals in life, or, you know, I get it. You want to break, you want to have a drink, you want to relax and enjoy, you know, other
Yeah.
options. There's no wrong thing with that. But when you put yourself in a position where you know you're taking a chance,
Yes.
then I mean, how could you not take responsibility for that?
I mean, when I was in college, believe me, did some stupid things, drinking and driving.
Everybody's
And I
guilty.
was lucky. And I look back in those times and saying, think of that as a hall pass, that you got an amazing pass, that you didn't kill somebody, you didn't kill
Right.
yourselves,
Yeah.
you know? And you know,
Likewise.
yeah. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm just going to look at it as being grateful for it and learn something from it.
Yeah.
Again, you know, it's not the fact we get in the sand trap that matters, how we get out of it that
Right.
counts in life,
Well,
as you've heard me say.
You learn from your own mistakes as well as other people's
You
mistakes.
do, and that's
yeah.
sometimes you learn more from your own mistakes.
Yes.
You know, you, and that's what you're supposed to do in life. You know, is for us to learn.
Yeah.
You know, and not think that we're perfect, 'cause we're not. We've all done something. You know, that we're.
Well, yeah, like I think I've had the same experience as you. It's like thinking back, I've gotten away with a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, it's not because I'm clever,
Right.
you know, in some cases. It's
Yeah.
just because I got lucky, or
yeah.
skated by. And
Yeah.
I don't overlook that, because it's funny when I hear about peers now getting into trouble because of decisions they've made. There's a non-judgmental place I take on that opinion, because it could have easily been me.
Right.
I just didn't get caught.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
you made a bad decision. You're paying the consequence. Sorry it ended up that way,
Right.
but you are the only one that got yourself there.
Exactly.
You can't blame anybody else.
That's about life and learning to own those things in life, and that's one thing that I think that I really believe in, is that above everything else, you've got to own what you do in life. You
Yeah.
know, that's on you. You can't blame anybody else, because once you start getting into that mode of saying, well, I wasn't raised right, or this or happened,
Sure.
we've seen too many people and have heard of too many people who had such horrifically bad lives, but came out of
Yes.
it as great people.
Yeah, talk
because
about
they
that
never
all the
let
time.
it be their crutch.
Right?
their
They
crutch.
consciously made a choice
Yes.
for themselves.
We all, and that's the freedom, right? It's the
Yeah.
freedom of what God was supposed to do is free will,
Right.
have the choice, not
Yeah.
going to make it for you, but try to do the right thing,
Yeah.
you know.
Are you religious or spiritual in
Spiritual, like
Yeah.
I said, Jewish mother, Italian Catholic father, but parents who taught me about, you know, to really be a good person. You know, I feel very spiritual, believe in God, but just not a real organized, you know,
Sure.
person for that. But
Yeah.
but you know, it's my heritage too as
Yeah.
well. And I think that spending the time to really just try to be good and try to do the right thing has been the key.
Yeah. You've been given a great foundation
Right.
and you're running with it.
Really so fortunate and
Yeah.
so lucky.
Yeah.
You know, that's feel blessed about.
Can't ask for anything more, really. All right, last thing.
Okay.
And this is a thing that I like to do on the podcast. It's an opportunity for you to either vent about something that's been bothering you in any category, but I've offered the idea that when you're driving, literally on the road,
Right.
what drives you nuts?
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be anything else, just a pet peeve, or a PSA about anything you'd like to just tell people.
You know, I mean, we all like to think that, you know, we're smarter than the things that we see other people do. Probably one of my pet peeves when I see, especially the youth or just people do really stupid things in an automobile.
Yeah.
You know, and we see it, and I'll tell you something, we see it every day. I see texting going on
Yeah.
every day,
Yeah.
and it does drive me nuts
Yeah.
because, you know, and you just go, God, I wish I had a badge. I wish I had lights on my car. I could light this, you know, just to pull people over to teach them. So what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe show them pictures of people dead and, you know,
Sure.
and what they've done, because how self-centered are you that you have to, and people are still, now it's almost like they're blatant. They're just holding their phone up and they're not even looking. And you can
Yeah.
always tell, right? Everybody can tell when you're following somebody in the car
Yep.
and they can't stay in their lane.
Yep.
And you know they're not drunk.
Oh yeah. I'm in
They're
a truck.
just texting.
I see it.
Oh, I see it all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And they're putting, you know, they're putting everybody's lives in jeopardy.
Yeah.
They're not paying attention.
Yeah.
Or you see kids racing in their car, and okay, here's one. So this happened, 6-8 months ago. I'm in the store. I'm looking out. I see this person in a motorcycle weaving. Now traffic is almost backed up. It's going westbound, and he guns it. And I mean, he was in a really hot motorcycle. He must hit 80 miles an hour in a short amount of time. And somebody turns in front of him onto Berg and dies.
Yeah.
I walked out there and saw his body on the ground.
Wow.
And he had a family.
Yep.
He had kids. And there was no reason for him to do what he did. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't understand why somebody would want to take that kind of chance in life. It made me angry.
Yeah.
Because, you know, not only the fact that you want to kill yourself, but the person, even though the person didn't get injured who he hit the side of their car,
Yeah.
they've got to live with that.
Yes. It's
And it
all
wasn't
in-
their fault because he
Right.
totally, but they still, you know, you're still part of it. How do you supposed to live with that?
Right. We're all affected.
We're all affected. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about if it's something, if you want to go fast, there are a lot of venues for you to go on your motorcycle
Yeah.
and go fast somewhere on a track.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they actually have programs for people to do that, but to do it out in public and to take their own, you know, just to do stupid, ignorant things. I've never done that part. You know, I've never.
Yeah.
That's something that I was lucky there. I never, you know, we all drive fast here and there, but not something that brazen and stupid.
Yeah.
So that's probably the one thing that I just, you know.
Yeah.
So we hear the motorcycle.
What a great sound effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
that's always kind of gets to me.
That's it. What?
Yeah.
You heard it, folks. Pay attention. Get off your damn phone.
Exactly.
Unless you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, there you go. That's something different now.
Yeah. Marcus, thanks so much, man.
Michael, I can't
so
believe
grateful.
it. I'm honored and thank you so much for just considering
Yeah.
me to be on here.
Well, we'll do it again sometime.
I hope so.
Awesome.
Okay, buddy.
All right.
Take care.
Well, everyone I ever meet goes here in this book. And now I met you, and you're going in the book.
I'm just